Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and today I'm super happy to be able to finally fly our beloved Black Square Dukes in Flight Simulator 2024. The update has just been released and it includes both the standard piston-driven and the turbine-driven Duke packages for Flight Simulator 2024. Today we're going to fly the Grand Duke, which is the slightly enhanced but piston-driven version of the Dukes, and we're going to take it from St. Lucia in the Caribbean up to St. Bartholomew with Anybuild's brand new scenery for this absolutely lovely airport. Really looking forward to it, and at this point thank you very much to Anybuild for providing a review copy of the airport. But let's start in the very beginning with our Dukes. Just like the TBM 850, the Dukes have received updates including some of the native FS 2024 features like the engine covers, pitot covers, chocks, etc., which you can handle from the walkaround mode, just like you can open things like the cabin door or the nose baggage door from the walkaround mode. Now, let's go ahead and prepare our airplane for today's flight. We are just receiving it on the apron over here, and we can remove the engine covers, remove the pitot covers down here, and then we also have our chocks in position down here. Apart from that, we do have the typical beautiful outside model from Black Square on the Duke, as we would expect. Loads of level of detail over here. Even when we go down and have a look at things like the landing gear that are rather hard to see, we can see a very fine amount of detail down here. Now, let's go around the aircraft, have a look at the lights we can see mounted over here. Again, everything in a very high and fine level of detail. Now, we are able to open the nose baggage door by just clicking on here. By the way, a very nice animation with that thing holding the door in place over here. And we can also close it that way again. Very nice. Now, let's go ahead and run over to our main entry door and let's get flying across the Caribbean over here. So, welcome to the cabin of our Duke. Let's actually go ahead and close this one up right away again. And here we go, and then we can walk all the way to the front and take a seat over here. Now, I am going to operate the airplane using the full checklists from the product manual, so if you're wondering where I'm getting my stuff, then that's exactly where I'm getting it. Now, the Duke cockpit is today equipped with the GTN 750 and GTN 650. However, down here in the tablet we now have a lot of options. For example, we could fit the GNS 530 if we wanted to, which is perhaps a little bit more in style with the times where the Dukes have mostly flown. In any case, any of those product is usable. I am going to retrofit the GTN 750 once again, so that we have the full navigation capabilities of that Avionics suit available in today's airplane. We do also have quite a lot of options down here now, such as control autopilot pitch with hardware events, which is a very useful one, because the autopilot is generally based on attitude hold mode for vertical navigation, and then you have that pitch wheel down here. So if you're able to control that with your hardware, that may not necessarily be a bad thing. Now, apart from that, we do have a couple of nice options here, such as a strobe effect within clouds. We can choose whether we want to load the airplane with chocks and covers deployed, and some nice stuff like that. We also do have the payload page up here, so today we are going to load 2 pilots, and then we are going to load 2 passengers with a little bit of rear baggage down there. The fuel status is saved from my previous flights. As you can see, I've already done 2 small flights to get back into the airplane here, to make myself comfy with it again before I start recording. So that stuff saves for your next flight. Apart from that, we do have the lovely systems overviews that we are used to from Black Square available over here, and we can also control our failures over there. So, for example, today we do have left engine, left magneto grounding active. Now, we could just go ahead and repair that over here, which I am actually going to do, so that way we have a clean airplane. Alright, and that's the tablet that we've got with the airplane. Now, let's actually go ahead and take it flying, and as always, we're going to start with a pre-flight cockpit checklist. That's pre-flight inspection complete, control locks 1 and 2 are removed, seats and seatbelts secured, cabin door, quick look back there, is latched, notes baggage door is latched, park and brake, that's down here, is set. Okay, landing gear lever is down, electrical switches are all off, then engine and avionics switches are all off, oxygen pressure is 1850 psi, circuit breakers are all in. Okay, intercooler air off, cabin pressure shut off open, alternate static air normal, CO detector. Yes, we have piston engines, so this thing is rather important. And that is tested. The environmental mode is off, flaps are up, prop sync off. So, throttle's closed, props at high RPM, mixture, full rich, trims centered, and fuel selectors on. And that's the pre-flight checklist complete. So, I'm not going to use ATC for today's flight, because you guys complained a little bit that it might be too loud or stuff, so we're not going to be using an ATC today. So let's continue with the before starting engine checklist. That's going to be the beacon light on, battery master on, bus voltage is 23 volt minimum, fuel quantities are checked. So cowl flaps fully open. I am just going to hold both switches here for a little bit. And here we go, then annunciators tested and considered. So left fuel pump on, it's audible and off again. Right fuel pump on, audible and off again. And that's the before starting engine checklist complete. So let's go ahead with the engine start checklist. And our engines are cold today. It is going to be the first flight of the day. So let's start with the oil pre-cooler. Well, with a pre-oiler. It's not meant to cool the oil. Alright, that's got to run for 30 seconds. Then, oil pressure on the right hand side is rising. At the end of the 30 seconds, we want to see it greater than 15 psi. Then, right mixture full rich, right prop full rich, right throttle fully open. So, right boost pump on for 5 to 8 seconds. Fuel flow is observed. That's basically priming the engine right now. And right boost pump off again, throttle open half an inch, like that. Okay, we've got the 30 seconds for the pre-oiler, the oil pressure is at 15 psi, beautiful. Okay, then we're ready to start the engine. So, right engine start. Okay, so right engine is started, then throttle for 1000 to 1200 RPM, like that, is looking good. Right oil pressure is observed green within 30 seconds. Right fuel pressure annunciator is off. Okay, right generator on. We do observe some load, but it's below 0.25. Bus voltage is 28 volts, roughly. Engine instruments are all checked. Okay, battery temperature below 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and that it is. You can kind of knock the glass a bit to get the needle to respond a bit more, but it's working just about fine. Alright, then we can reset our timer and start the pre-oiler on the left engine. Again, 30 seconds. So we'll check the oil pressure after 30 seconds. Left mixture is full rich, left prop control is high RPM, left throttle maximum, then fuel boost pump on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and off again. That's our engine primed. Then left throttle close and open half an inch, and we're reaching 30 seconds for the pre-oiler. Oil pressure is above 15 psi, very good. And pre-oiler off, and then we can go ahead and start the left engine. And here we go. So, increased throttle for 1000 RPMs. Left oil pressure is observed. Okay, so fuel pressure annunciator off, generator on, generator load is checked. It's below 0.25. Bus voltage again, 28 volts. Engine instruments are checked and the pre-oiler is off. Right, battery temperature is below 140, looking good. And that's the engine start checklist complete. So let's go ahead with the after start checklist. Boost pumps on if temperature is above 32 degrees Celsius. And it is not, it's 29. That's fine. Lights as required. We'll just keep the beacon for the time being, and we'll also turn the nav light on. Alright, weather radar is on standby, then avionics switch on, main inverter on. Okay, inverter annunciator is off, mixture, cabin temperature mode, auto, mixture lean for taxi. And next up is going to be the park and rate release, but before that we are quickly going to set up our avionics for today's flight. So, still licensed to my old username, 737NG driver, but we are using the TDS GTN-XI over here, which as you can see has a current Navigraph database and also current charts from Navigraph. Just beautiful. Alright, so we are going to turn this on, going to turn this on, and then let's go into the flight plan. Now let's quickly
TOS system test okay.
Might take a little moment for SimBrief to come up. Normally it's quicker than that. Let's try that one more time. Okay, looks like SimBrief has some problems today. In that case, I will have to do it off screen. The website's working just fine, so I have it on my iPad right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We are departing Tango Lima Papa Charlie, and we are going to fly direct Fox Oscar Fox. Direct Martinique, then we continue via Alpha 312. Towards Alpha November Uniform, VC Bird, and from there we continue via Bravo 520 to Elopo. Load and then direct Tango Fox Fox Juliet. St. Bartholomew, and here we go. Beautiful. So let's open that up over here. Let's open the flight plan down here, and it looks like we don't have transfill turned on. Let's quickly correct that mistake. So that's system and setup, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, transfeed is on, interesting. Okay. That's very interesting indeed. Normally this should be working out of the box. Tell you what, let's turn it off and on again. So, data from this unit will override data in the other. That's how it's meant to be. No, you're not supposed to override. Okay, interesting. Looks like the two don't really want to communicate with one another today. So be it. Then I tell you what we're gonna do. We'll be using the lower one for the terrain awareness down here. Okay, cool. So, transponder, we can turn that unit on over here. And we also want our SATCOM to be on. And I tell you what, I'm just going to try something here. Let's go back to systems, and then we'll actually turn off the crossfill. That's just so that the different units are not going to conflict with one another when we're en route. Okay, like this. Transponder is on, and squawk, well, basically 2000, since we will be doing an IFR pickup once we're en route. Monitoring 1 and 2, mic selector is on 1. We're on tower frequency over here. Now, we can actually get the real world tower frequency if we want to. That's up here. And, well, ground 1 to 1.8. You can switch that active, and tower 118.0. You can put that into the standby. And that's about as easy as it gets over here. Just gotta love those units. They're really, really nice. Okay, cool. Now there is something that I do want to try. Let's just turn that transponder off down here. Because for some reason that I haven't quite figured out yet, sometimes it's a little bit laggy when I'm flying this airplane. And I have a feeling it may be a conflict with some of the avionics down there. So for that reason I'll keep our hardware transponder off. I'll be using the transponder in the G1000 down there. This is new since sim update, what's it called again, since the sim update came out, so not much we can do. Alright, now for the weather. We don't have weather available for this airport, so let's just see what's nearby that has weather. I think it should be that one up here, TLPL. Weather data also doesn't have weather. Okay, well in that case we'll make our life easy. So TLPC, field elevation 22 feet. We'll just set our altimeters to fit 22 feet. Alright, like this. Perfect. So, looks like we don't have a safe taxi for this airport, but then again, small general aviation airport, so not surprising. Alright, so do we have a windsock somewhere to know which runway is in use? Not really. But I tell you what, we don't want to take off towards the mountains. So let's go ahead and backtrack all the way. Easy as that, isn't it? Alright, cool. Then to finish off our after start checklists, taxi line on, park and brake off, and off we go. Alright, let's see. The left hand side is all clear, the right hand side is all clear. Perfect. So pretty hot inside, not surprising. But there isn't all that much that we can do about this until we're actually airborne. What's the temperature inside? 37 degrees. Ouch. Well, let's open the window, it might help a little bit. And as soon as we're airborne, we do have all our cooling abilities. But now I'll turn on the blower down here. Okay. So first course 012, as we can see up here. Yes, we do have to set this manually. It does not happen automatically. And then we can set our runway heading to west, since it's a runway 27 that we're taking off on. And here we go. That's the occasional lags that I talked about, from which I really have absolutely no idea where they come from. It will stop again in a few moments. For some interesting reason, they mostly seem to happen when I'm approaching a runway. I've noticed the same thing on previous flights, so I really don't know what causes those. Okay, so here we are. Let's stop over here, hope that the lags are gonna go away in a moment. And then park and brake is set. Okay, good. So let's actually go ahead and close that window, and then we'll start with a run-up. So, run-up checklist. Park and brake set, annunciators tested and considered, remote compass. That's west, looks good. Okay, fuel selectors on cross feed. Fuel pumps on. Then mixture full rich. Throttle for 2000 RPMs. like this. Alright, so exercise the props for a 300 RPM drop. That's looking good. So check the magnetos. We are looking for a maximum of 150 RPM drop. So, right magneto. That's about 150, that's okay. Both. Back to 2000. Left magneto. Again about 150. And both. Instrument air is checked in the green, so left generator off. The right one bears all the load, that looks good. Left gen on, right gen off, and the left one bears all the load. And generator back on again. Alright, now we go for the throttle off at 2500 RPM to check the pressurization system. Here we go, 2500. The window is closed. So, cabin altitude 2000 below field elevation and test. And we can see the cabin is descending. Looks good, and back to norm, and now we can set our cruising altitude. We'll be cruising at 24,000, so the cabin goes up to like a 9.5. Alright, looks good, and throttles back to 1500 RPMs to check the anti-ice system. Here we go. Alright, so propeller heat is on. Propeller heat ground test. We can observe the prop amps over there. And that is looking good. Then propeller heat goes back off again. Windshield heat on. We can observe the volts between 220 and 260 over there. The ammeter has increased, and windshield heat back off again. Now watch the load meters as I'm about to turn on the rest of the anti-ice systems. And we can see an increase in the load for all of them. Right, and then we can switch them right back off. Okay, now let's continue with the boots. Now the indicator is hidden behind the prop levers here, so I'll just pull them back. That's not officially part of the procedure, but I don't care. So, single cycle, and we can see how the pressure increases and it will drop again. Now let's go for manual cycle, and the pressure increases once again. That is looking beautiful. Okay, good. So now we can reduce the throttles back to 1000 to 1200 RPMs. That's our engine run up. Got a couple other systems to check though. So, fuel selectors back to on. This way we now know that the cross feed is operational because our engines didn't quit in that time. So, pitch trim electrical power on, then let's go ahead and check the electrical trim, which is looking good. Then autopilot on, and 30 degrees left, yoke follows, 30 degrees right. The yoke follows, and let's go back to straight. And disengage works, and second press to hide the flight director works as well. Takeoff trim is set. Now we're going to check the flaps. We'll extend them to full, ensure that they go all the way through. And here we go, flaps down. Let's get them back up to ensure that we can actually retract them as well. Alright, and now flaps onto the approach position for our takeoff. Okay, so cabin door annunciator is extinguished, flight controls are working just fine. So, first altitude set, runway heading is set, and then we just gotta turn on the lights. So, strobe lights on, landing lights on, and we'll also turn the recognition light on down there. And that's the run-up checklist complete, so let's continue with the before takeoff checklist. Mixture is at max power, oil temperatures, let's see, at 35 minimum, no problem at all. Okay, battery temperature is below 120 degrees, looking good. Air conditioning system off, transponder on, and looks like that automatically starts our other unit as well. Okay, weather radar on. That's going to be especially useful here in the Caribbean. Let's ensure that the angle is nice and positive, +5 for our takeoff, and with that the before takeoff checklist is complete. So let's reset our elapsed timer down here, and with that we are ready to go. So transponder 2000 on out, and that's all looking good. Then I'd say ready. Park and brake is released, timer, and takeoff. Thrust set. About 120 is looking excellent for our climb, and once we've completed the turn we can set our climb power. Alright, that's looking awesome. Then let's turn on the autopilot, nav mode, attitude is on anyway, match the heading book. Looking good. Okay, so en route climb checklist. Mixture for maximum power. Propellers should be at 1750. Or 2750, sorry. That's roughly over here. So, manifold pressure 35.5 inches. It's interesting, by the way, that the checklist wants us to move the props first and the manifold second. Normally you always do manifold pressure first. Okay, cowl flaps open, boost pumps off, crop sync on, and cabin pressure monitor. Let's see, it's climbing rather rapidly, but differential pressure is building, cabin is climbing. Right, cabin temperature and modes, we'll go into auto heat, and engine performance monitor. That's the en route climb checklist complete. In this case, I think we'd rather need auto cool for the first part of the climb. Also quickly turn the blower to high until the cabin temperature has reduced to a good value. And with that, my friends, we're up and on our way. So at this point, let's go ahead and continue the climb to 10,000. We'll also get our IFR clearance, or rather our IFR pickup at this point, which says basically climb to flight level 240, which is now set. Okay, and well, with that we're up and on our way. Flight time is going to be about an hour and 20 minutes, so I will keep you updated whenever something meaningful happens. Alright, after about 21 minutes we have reached our cruising altitude of 24,000 feet. So let's go ahead and start working on a couple checklists. Namely, we do have the cruise checklist here. So that's going to be as follows. Cowl flaps as required, and I will be closing them. As you can see, our sim is somewhat lagging once again. So, cylinder temperatures are actually rather warm, so tell you what, let's keep the cowl flaps open for the time being. Then boost pumps off, and they're off. Pitot heat on if OAT is less than 4 degrees, and it sure is. It's minus 18 up here. So windshield heat as required, prop heat as required, surface DS as required, fuel imbalance 25 maximum. And looking over here, we are pretty much in balance. Tiny bit less on the left side, that's okay. So mixture, lean, rich off peak or lean off peak. Now for this, let's actually first go ahead and set our power. We do have a table in the manual that we can check for that. So I do have that open on my iPad right now. We'll be flying at 75% of maximum continuous power, which equals 34 inches on a standard day. Now, in the real world, you would have some tables for variations from the standard day as well. Unfortunately, we don't have that in the sim, so we'll just have to live with what we can get here. Alright, so it's gonna be... Actually, tell you what, let's slightly change that to 65% of max continuous power, because it's a little bit nicer for the passengers. So it's gonna be 32 inches. Let's go ahead and reduce our throttles a little bit to 32 inches. Here we go. And then set the RPMs at 2500. And here we go. So fuel flow should be about 112 pounds per hour per engine. Actually, a little bit below that already. That's interesting. But okay. Let's go ahead and start leaning. So we'll be pulling this back until we're reaching the peak on the left-hand side. And here we go. Now the fuel flow is about at 112 pounds per engine. That looks about good to me. Let's do the same on the other engine. And here we go. I think this is just about gonna be fine. Alright, lovely. So then let's return to the checklist and continue that on. So that's gonna be cabin temperature and load. Let's check. Well, 16 might be a little bit cold over here. Let's actually turn that up a little bit. Okay, cabin pressure is monitored and looking just about fine. So cabin altitude is about 10,000 feet with the differential pressure close to the maximum. Monitor the engine performance, and that's the cruise checklist completed. Alright, so now we can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. And one more thing that I want to do before that is go down here. Temperature is about minus 20, cruising in 24,000. So let's set that little ring over here. We're going to set the 24,000 feet down here to minus 20 degrees up here. About like this. Now we get our true airspeed down here, which is about 240 knots at the moment, as you can see. So that way we know our true airspeed here as well, using old and conventional methods. I kind of like this. I really do. Alright, so enjoy a trip across the Caribbean, and then I'll see you all when we start our approach preparation later on.
Vertical track.
So my friends, the airplane's just announced it. We'll start our descent in just a minute time. So let's go ahead and start to prepare ourselves for that descent. Now, first things first, we gotta find out our landing field elevation, which, since you all know San Bartholomew is 0, it's right at sea level elevation. Now, I've done my VNAV using the GTN 750, so that way we know exactly where we're going down here. Note that I've selected a 3-degree flight path angle. It gives me a VS target of 1340 feet a minute, but that will increase as soon as we start our descent, because our airspeed is going to increase within that descent as well. So, we are reaching the top of descent just now. Let's go ahead and start down to something like level 150. Then we're going to select attitude mode again and dial this down a little bit to match the required FPM. I'll even go a little bit further. I'll go to 1500 straight away because we will be accelerating and therefore the required vertical speed is going to increase a little. So look at that. That looks about fine to me. Alright, while we're starting the descent, let's also start dialing down the cabin altitude to our destination field elevation, which is basically 0, and then we can control that rate of descent here a little, something like that, 800 feet a minute. Let's do a little bit less, something 700, looks pretty good to me. Alright, with that out of the way, let's go for the descent checklist, please. That's cabin altitude goal, set to destination altitude, cowl flaps close. So let's go ahead and close them up here. Hold it for a couple of seconds, and here we go. Now the cowl flaps should be closed. So, throttle, we'll reduce it to maintain 200 knots over here. And that gives us vertical speed required of about 1600 feet a minute. So let's make sure that the plane flies that nicely. Alright, so mixture enriching, engine performance monitor, cylinder at temperature 125 degrees minimum, which is basically down here. And ice protection as required, descent checklist complete. So as we're now going down, let's ensure our track is set. If we were to fly an instrument approach, we would of course do all the instrument approach preparation now as well, but since we are going to fly a visual today, that's none of our concern. Last but not least, let's get some landing weather information over here. So the closest airport with weather, probably going to be St. Martin, so let's find that one. It's going to be somewhere up there. So in a bit, T5J won't have weather, TNCF will have weather. Let's find that weather data not available. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, good. So no weather available for that as well. In that case, I'll have to look up the current weather offline. Normally the GTN should have all those features. Not sure why they don't work at the moment. But in any case, that's that part. So we are now in our descent, and then I see you all a bit closer to our destination. We've passed 10,000 feet and we are now about starting the approach to our destination airport. A couple things that we can review before we start the approach itself, and I think we're actually going to start with a couple of lags as always, because why wouldn't we? Then let's actually increase our mixture over here, and then let's go ahead and review the approach itself. So below 10,000. Recognition light comes on, and we'll also turn on the taxi and the landing lights down here. And now let's have a very quick look into our approach charts. So this is what our approach is going to look like. It's pretty much fairly straight in, coming in via Sugarloaf, which is a little rock in the bay on the approach, and then we gotta ensure that we come in straight over here, because the runway is pretty much invisible during the approach itself. That's what makes this one so interesting. If you look down at the info charts over here, you can see it's a fairly short runway. It's 646 meters. We'll be coming in over the mountain, and then we'll put her down as soon as possible. Let's try not to over-flare it, because even though the ocean is located just past the threshold of runway 28, it might be a little bit, let's just say, not so nice to deliver our guests into the water before they're able to put on any of their swimming shorts. So that's that part. Now for the approaches, we just have the visual approach chart over here. something that the GTN unfortunately does not enable me to open up is the reference chart, because there would be a couple of very nice ones over there. Nothing on the departures and arrivals, and over here nothing either, so no reference charts for us, which is a little bit of a pity, because those are fairly useful for the approach to this particular airport, because they tell us where exactly to fly over in order to actually make it to the runway when we pass over that. Well, that way we'll have to do that stuff on our own, so we'll just open up the approach chart, or rather we'll have the approach chart ready to open it up anytime we need it. Okay, cool. So then let's go right back onto our GTN, and we are now setting course directly to the island. We'll land at runway 10, so we'll have to fly around it and then come back that way for our landing. Now, we've planned to be in 1,500 feet, 10 miles prior to the airfield. That way we should be below all the clouds and thus nicely able to set ourselves up for the visual approach. So let's go all the way down. We're looking for 1,500. Like this. And we've already set the local QNH of 1011, which I've gotten from the actual METAR of the airport, which you can find on the internet, so not quite sure why the GTN wouldn't give me that information. Looks like there must be something wrong with the data service at the moment, or something the likes. But in any case, I think we can already start with the approach checklist. So that's seats and seatbelts secured, cabin altitude and differential. Progress is checked, almost down at the ground. So fuel selectors are both on, fuel imbalance is completely fine, a little bit less on the left side still, as expected. Okay, recognition lights on, pitot heat. Well, we could theoretically turn it off already. Temperature is already plus 20 degrees over here, but for good measure I'll leave them on until we're all the way on the ground. Windshield heat off, prop heat off, cabin temperature and mode. Officially supposed to set this off for the approach, so let's do that. Power flaps retracted, mixture max power, and standing by for the flaps. That's the approach checklist complete. So, a little bit of low-lying stuff over here. Let's get below that. Might just about have to increase our rate of descent a little bit here. Let's do 2,000 feet a minute, because we need to break those clouds in order to be able to cancel the IFR to start our approach into St. Bartholomew. Reducing a little bit of power, we don't want to go too fast on an approach like this. At least not at this altitude. Even though we are right over the open ocean and it's rather unlikely that we're going to find birds over here, it could still happen. And it would probably not turn out very well for our windshield. So, let's start reducing that power down here. And then we're going to find a way through the clouds. I think by now we are good to cancel our IFR. Let's go back to squawk 7,000 down here. And then let's descend to 1,000 feet. And the pattern officially starts. Okay, now we can actually see everything. Alright. 30 watts, then we'll maintain 1,500. And on capture. So, since we're level, let's go power 3225. I'm not going to lean it anymore. It's totally fine the way it is right now. Alright, good. So, we'll set course directly to the airport over here. Let's go ahead and go into heading mode. Ooh, that was a little bit aggressive here. Just maintain that heading, please. Alright, now visual, runway 10, and activate. Cool. Then let's see, runway 10 has got a track of 103, so let's already pre-select this. Here we go. Nice. So with that, we're all the way set up. Now it's just a matter of actually getting the airfield inside. As you can see, visibility is a little bit limited here, but honestly, that's pretty much how I expect the weather to be in the Caribbean, like all year long. because you've just got those incredibly high level of moistures in the air. And look at that, our island slowly comes into view. Slowly but steadily. So we do even have an approach chart overlay on the GTN, I like that. And then let's turn slightly left, heading 310, in order to avoid overflying the island itself. I actually have to go heading 300 here. Let's do that. So, something that I really like about equipping my aircraft with the GTN XI is that by entering that visual over here, we get an extended center line that we can also use down here on our HSI, and we even get the 3-degree glide slope from our glide slope indicator. That's just really, really cool. Alright, so there's our island. Let's see if we can already make out St. Bartholomew, but I don't think we can. Well, it's gotta be down here. Oh yeah, that's the bay. That's the bay. Nice. Then let's start reducing our airspeed in order to make it nice and stable. And yep, that's definitely the base. So the field is hidden behind the mountain over here. Okay, so here's Sugarloaf, which is just south of the extended center line. Approach. If it lets me. Here we go. So all the lights are on and everything is set. We are basically ready to go. Fuel pumps coming on, props in going off. Then landing checklist please. Cabin differential pressure is pretty much 0. Boost pumps on, props in off, props set high RPM, mixture for max power, and flaps and gear to go. Landing lights on, checklist complete. Alright. So let's make it a right hand turn. And I think then we can take over manually here. So autopilot off. So, landing gear down, flaps full. So, onto a nice 3-mile final. Of course, with a little help from the GTN. There's Sugarloaf on the right hand side over there. Descent. 3 miles, we should be at 1,000. Current speed roughly 90 knots, so we're looking at about 450 feet a minute for the approach. So, looks like vertical guidance is not available, as the GTN actually told us. But we are on the center line now. As mentioned, this is really useful because you do happen to come in like without seeing the runway until the last moment. So having that GPS guidance for centerline tracking, pretty good. Let's maintain the airspeed at about 90 knots. The stall speed is 70. This is looking wonderful. Alright, 2 miles out, so we should be in about 600. That's looking wonderful. Let's continue the descent. We're looking to fly through this little gap over there.
$500.
Checked. So guys, I'm sure you all know the video of, I think it actually was a Duke, overshooting the runway and going for a swim at the end of the runway. We don't want to be those guys. Down and brakes. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. That's how I love doing this. Alright, so let's bring the props back up to 1000 RPMs. Don't leave them in idle for too long. We'll do 180 at the end of the runway over here, and man, look at this. That's a beautiful Caribbean Sea right there. And a beautiful rendition of the airport. Let's just stop here for a second. I mean, look at this. Just look at this. Fantastic, isn't it? I'm still not sure which landing direction I prefer, whether it's runway 10 or runway 28, because 28 has a beautiful approach as well, circling through the bay. But anyway, with this, welcome to St. Bartholomew. So let's go for the after landing checklist. That's fuel pumps off, then cowl flaps open. Let's zoom out a little bit so that we can actually see where we're taxiing while doing this. And here we go, the cowl flaps are now open, so flaps up. Then, cabin altitude differential pressure, both at 0, weather radar, off standby, lights. So, the lights are off, then ice protection is all off, and cabin temperature and mode. Put the blower back on just to get a little bit of cooling here. It's 28 degrees inside already. And that's the after landing checklist complete. So, General Aviation is officially parking on the other end side, but I think it's really worth showing you the main apron over here. This is like where the twin otters from St. Martin are regularly landing. Generally a beautiful area. Also a nice little heliport over there. And I've just got to admit, this is very, very nicely done. Look at the terminal over there. It's beautiful, doesn't it? And yes, guys, I'm taxiing this live, so don't worry if I'm not exactly on the center line here. Not that easy. Beautiful, isn't it? Absolutely beautiful. Now let's go back inside, because I think we can continue straight over here to the General Aviation parking on the other hand side. Of course, it would have been good if I hadn't stopped uphill, because this entire area is going a little bit uphill over here. But here we go. Beautiful airport. Really beautiful airport. Especially flying down the slope over here. We can do this more often. If you guys want me to do this more often, do let me know in the comments. Because this was certainly a lot of fun. So, crossing the runway up to the GA apron. goes to standby, and then we'll just park it somewhere over here. Alright, and stop. Good, so park and brake is set, then we can do the shutdown checklist. Park and brake set. Avionics switches off, boost pumps off, electrical switches are all off. Okay, throttles closed, props to high RPM, mixtures cut off. So, engines are standing, magnetos off, battery generators off, battery master off, park and brake release, and control locks installed. Lovely, and with that we've made it to St. Bartholomew. Now let's go ahead and open up that door. Let's get outside, put all the covers and stuff in place. So thank you very much. We can close you once again. And look at this. Beautiful GA apron, isn't it? So, chocks in place, engine covers in place, pitot covers in place. In places like these there are so many bugs, so many insects, you really got to be careful that you secure your airplane properly. And let's see, the static ports are covered here as well. Beautiful. So, that way we'll be safe to go again when we make our next flight. But for the time being, thank you very much everyone. I do hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. I surely had a blast flying this. Leave your feedback in the comments underneath the video. As always, like, comment and subscribe. And if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much, and at this point once again thank you to both Black Square and InnyBuilds for providing the sceneries for today's flight.